to be the difference that you want to see in this world, in your school system, in the lives of young people. Take that chance, take that risk. You can always go back and teach if it doesn't work out. I've had administrators take the leap with me, and then it just wasn't for them, and they went back to teaching, and all is good and all is great. But you're never going to know the full impact that you can possibly have.
This is the Engaging Leadership Show, where we uncover the stories and strategies behind successful educational leadership. In today's episode, we're going to be going deep in the experience of one school district that has gone full inclusion with their kids, TK through 12. Whether they're special education or general education, they're all going to the same classes, and how they've innovated the way that they teach and support kids at every level of their journey. Listen in for more on the Engaging Leadership Show. Today's guest is a veteran administrator. This is his 15th year as a superintendent. He's been a superintendent so far of 2 districts, and he was the recipient of the California Small School Districts Superintendent of the Year Award in 2015. It is a great privilege for me to have in our studios today Dr. Bryan Ballenger. He's the superintendent of Gustine Unified School District out here in California. Bryan, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, CT. I'm looking forward to this.
Awesome. Tell us a little bit more about your school district and the community at Gustine. What's unique about it? What do you most like about it?
School district is located in the northern part of Merced County. We are classified as a rural school district. We're a small school district. We've got about 1,650 students enrolled in transitional kindergarten through 12th grade. We also run an adult program as well here on the west side. The community is small. Probably the city of Gustine itself has about 9,000 residents. We serve 2 communities. We serve the community of Gustine and the community of Santanella. And we've got 2 elementary schools. They're TK through 5th grade, a 6-8 middle school, and a 9-12 high school. We're predominantly Hispanic. We're about 86% Hispanic, and 1/3 of our students are classified as English learners.
Got it. Thank you for that very comprehensive introduction. I have actually had the pleasure of driving through your district a couple of times in Santanella and Gustine, so a really lovely place to be. And we were talking about all things education, and one of the things that came up was that part of your career, you started out almost like, in one point, a special education teacher. And that has influenced how you're looking at the delivery of special ed services within Gustine Unified today. Could you talk me through a little bit about your experience and then how that has shaped how you see SPED at Gustine today?
Yes, I started my career as a high school special education teacher. Back then we had moderate to severe and mild moderate credentials. I hold a mild moderate California special education credential and taught primarily what we classified as resource students. We had resource students, special day students, and severely emotional students as well. And so I served our higher end special needs students, teaching them subject matter courses. Back then, we actually were part of a pullout replacement type program. So rather than students being included in the general education population classes for English, math, science, and social studies, we actually taught those in a special education classroom with only special education students. And it was my goal to help as many students as I could to achieve, to break those molds and those barriers that kept them in special education and get them into the general education setting. As I've transitioned into the superintendency, my first superintendency, I was at an even smaller school district. We had about 500 students, kindergarten through 8th grade, and all of our more severe special needs students were in a county program. And it really broke my heart to watch these kids every day get on a separate bus than their brothers and sisters and not go to the same school. So we really changed our program out there and made it to where we were including all of our special needs kids all of our special education students into our school district. And it really taught me a lot about what students could do when exposed to a higher level curriculum and higher expectations. But it also showed me what kindness kids have for one another and how they wrap their arms around those students and welcome them into their classroom on a daily basis. And they took care of them. They were their friends, genuinely caring about them. And here in Gustine Unified, we've taken that one step further. And we run all of our special education services here in the district through what we call a full inclusion model. And so we're not pulling students out of the core curriculum to provide them specialized curriculum in the areas of math, English, social studies, science, electives, those kinds of things. We actually are pushing and co-teaching using our special education staff members. Both teachers and instructional aides are going into the classroom and providing support to all kids, not just those with special needs and those with on an IEP. They're actually providing small group instruction, parallel instruction to what the general education teacher is doing every single day. And it really has had a positive effect on those students that are part of the program and those students that are in our general education setting. Once again, they are taking full responsibility, partnerships, and forming relationships with our special education students that were not necessarily there prior to this.
That's incredible to hear and so heartwarming to hear about the students being just welcomed with open arms into general education. I guess one of the prevailing ideas about having the pull-out model for special education is something that you've experienced personally as a teacher, where you had a class of kids who were all special education or marked to receive special education. One of the things that struck me is there's no one size fits all when it comes to special education. So what is the thinking behind that model where if you have all of them in the same class, you still have to personalize instruction to quite a significant degree anyway? Was there any difference at all in having, as a teacher of that class, did you find it at all useful to have them all in one room?
I found it useful in the sense that I got to see all of my students at the same time. Generally, those that were struggling and couldn't access the general curriculum, we were modifying and adapting and transform their educational experience to meet their needs inside the classroom. But the problem and the thing that we've discovered is those peer-to-peer relationships outside of special education are so key and so valuable. But like in our district, we're small. Where those students would go to receive special education services at the middle school and the high school, especially, all the students knew that those classrooms were intended for special education students. So there became a stigma associated with those classrooms. And so those students who were receiving special education services often would miss those classes, would find a way to be in the office, would find a way to be in the bathroom, not let anybody see them go into that room because there was a stigma attached to that. And they would goof off and get in trouble inside that classroom because they really didn't want to be there. They wanted to be with their general education students and be part of the normalized population as if nothing was wrong. And so one of the benefits that we've seen is the social and emotional levels of our students rise. And with that, we've seen discipline referrals in special education cut down at the middle school and high school by over 70%. We have suspensions are down almost non-existent as a result. We're seeing test scores on formative assessments that we use within the district go up and go up significantly, much more than their general education counterparts. On state testing, we're still not necessarily hitting grade level all the time, but we're seeing huge improvements in our student testing abilities. We're also seeing on the social emotional side, we're seeing our special education students participating more in clubs and sports where they didn't do those things before.
That's truly amazing to hear. And we haven't spoken about the impact that it has on the general education population as well. I feel like this would actually improve the diversity of education that they get socially and academically. Would you say that to be true?
I would say that to be 100% true. And where we see it where it's really pronounced is at the elementary level. They do a really good job of welcoming the special education students into the general ed classroom. Students are assisting and helping, being their friends out on the playground socially because they're in class together. They're included in activities and different types of sports on the playground and really getting a much broader education than just being limited to a special education classroom where they only know special education students and they go out and share recess time and they have nobody else that they're playing with, socializing with, interacting with, making friendships with. And so we really see it intensely at the elementary level. That's not to say it's not happening at middle school and high school, because it is. Obviously, with them playing sports, they're starting to feel comfortable with their peers and are starting to feel really included, and that the high school experience is about them as well.
Yeah, that's such an incredible journey to go through as a district. And if you think back to when you had to implement this, was it a big change for the district to move from a pull-out model to a full inclusion model? What was the original reaction to that?
So it's been a very big learning curve. We started with the high school and the middle, and really the reason why everybody is moving towards inclusion in California. It is where we want our students to be. We went just a little bit faster because we were forced to because of staffing. And we needed to have so many resource teachers and so many special day teachers at the high school and middle school. And we had vacancies that we couldn't fill. And so what we decided at that point was to say, you know what, we're going to go forward with inclusion, and we're going to have support centers for students to be able to come into that are both special day and resource. Our caseloads are mixed with those students rather than having separate caseloads of special day student and a resource student. That's intertwined, and they can come into the learning centers and get help from our learning specialists, which used to be our special day teachers and our resource teachers. But they're all going out and co-teaching most of the day, and then they come in for skills labs and other homework opportunities. One of the areas I know people are like, okay, so if you're going full inclusion, how do you meet the math requirements in the state of California? That's a very difficult thing for students to be able to do. And so they've got to either be able to get through algebra or math one. And so we've gone to a really strong team teaching model in math one with a math teacher and one of our learning specialists, our inclusion specialists, and they're team teaching, really truly co-teaching the entire class. And we've made those class sizes a little smaller so they can get a little more attention, but it is an equal mix of general ed students and special education students. And we're just working extremely hard. The two teachers that are team teaching are on the same page, and they really have it down. And in the beginning, we provided a lot of training, both training for mathematics, and then we provided a lot of training in co-teaching here in the district.
Yeah, talk to me a little bit more about what that team teaching and co-teaching looks like. Is it just a matter of having two teachers in the class with like more number of students? What are the mechanics of that?
So there's really four models that you can use for co-teaching. You can have one teach, one assist, which is pretty common, where you've got the one standing and delivering, the other moving through and working with kids. In our math class at the high school, we see parallel teaching, where they're both teaching the same thing to smaller groups of students. And that way they're able to specialize and get those groups smaller. They do what we call station rotations in that class, where kids are rotating from station to station, and the teachers occupy two of the stations and work with students hands-on and closely when they're practicing their problems. And so students get a ton of time with the teachers, a ton of time working on problem sets until mastery.
So is it more of an improved instructional approach with the same teacher-student ratio, or do you find that your teacher-student ratio, you can have more students per teacher while at the same time getting better instruction?
In our classes that we team teach and co-teach, We don't fill those any higher than we do our regular sections. And so it really truly is the ability, and because our special ed students are in those classes, gives us the opportunity to just work in smaller groups. It's improved and refining our instructional techniques.
Wow, that's truly pretty amazing. Is there a plan to roll this out, this model of instruction out to all the classes rather than just Math 1? Or is this just confined to math instruction?
No, we just do a really good job in the Math 1 area to get kids through and meet their graduation requirements. We actually team teach in all the core subject areas at the middle and high school. At the elementary level, we team teach during ELA time and math time. Generally, that's where the goals are written. Sometimes it is two certificated teachers doing it together, and sometimes that's an instructional aide and a teacher who have been trained to work together.
Got it. Now, circling back on the full inclusion model, to a certain extent, like it was driven by staffing challenges, but on the other hand, it seems to have worked quite well. And you're saying that now the state of California is already pretty much a commonplace thing. Why do you think it took us this long to get to this realization of something that is just so much better for everyone?
I think that we had a traditional method by which we would provide services for students. And for a long time, what we knew about instruction, what we knew about students with disabilities, that was working, or people felt that was meeting those needs. I don't think until you started to really try inclusion and do more around inclusion did we see all the benefits. And to be honest with you, like from my journey and my personal experience as a leader here in the district, I didn't expect all of the extras that came with it. I didn't expect students to go now and play sports because they felt more comfortable and their friends were bringing them to the sports team, that they were going, the behavior, off task behavior, misbehavior would decrease by our office referrals by 70%. I didn't expect that. I didn't expect fights and those kinds of things involving special education students would decrease by over 50%. Once you get into it and you see it in action, it's hard to argue that this is not the best way to provide students with an educational opportunity.
Got it. So a lot of these benefits emerged as a byproduct of that shift. And now we know this is the way to go, but it wasn't that clear at the point before. And was there a large amount of pushback when you had to shift into this model of full inclusion at that time?
There's been pushback because change is hard. Change is difficult. Change is scary for people. And this goes against the norms. And not every teacher is prepared or trained to meet the needs that our special education students have. And that's been a struggle at times is, okay, so I've got this student with these needs. How do I adjust? And that's where we've started to build in planning time between the general education teacher and the special education teacher, or planning time between the general education teacher and the instructional aide, so that they can work together to design lessons and activities that support all students. And that has gone over really well. Next year, as part of our professional learning communities and our collaboration time that we utilize on a weekly basis, we've actually carved out time in the day while teachers, instructional aides are here so that they can plan together to better meet the needs of all of our students.
That's great. And all of that is also coming against the backdrop of just broadening mental health support across the board for your students in the district. Talk to me a little bit more about how that is being done, and in your mind, how that kind of meshes in with the support and the inclusive support that you're giving for special ed students.
COVID was really tough on kids, and it was really tough on our kids being isolated. They go from seeing an adult that they know cares about them every single day and knows that has their best intentions, to now being on a Zoom where I don't have to share my camera with the teacher. So the teacher really doesn't have face-to-face interaction with me, and having to live through that, then coming back and forgetting about all of those things and then trying to establish those relationships again. And so behaviors when we came back from COVID were really high. Kids had a lot of anxiety, depression, stress. The relationships between our educators and our students were not the same. And so we made a conscious effort with our ESSER dollars to hire 2 mental health clinicians and a board certified behavior specialist. And today we have 3 mental health clinicians in the district that provide services for students. We have 2 BCBAs providing behavior intervention, and then we have a counselor at all 4 of our schools, and we have 2 at the high school. And so as a team, we have different levels of support that we're able to provide students TK through 12. We're looking at it very much like we do getting kids extra support, whether that's special education or an SST process. Along those lines, we're looking at really as a multi-tiered level, a system of support in different levels and different avenues that we can work with kids and families to provide them everything that they need so that they can learn. And if their mental health and their emotional well-being is not well taken care of, and if they don't feel connections, they don't feel supported, they don't feel valued, they're not going to come into class and be prepared to learn that day. And we've really put an emphasis on those positions and the levels of support that we can provide our learners as well as their families.
Is this provision conditional on the ESSER funds? Because that has pretty much dried up. Is there a budgetary impact on this program with the change in funding availability?
Yeah, we moved it into our LCAP. And so we use our LCFF dollars to fund these positions. We saw the impact that it had. We saw the decrease in student behavior as a result of having these support systems in place. And so we made a conscious decision to continue to fund those positions and even expand it by 1 BCBA and 1 mental health clinician so that we could try and get to all the kids who have the varying needs within the district.
Well, that's amazing. And it sounds like there's a lot of support within your district for that whole spectrum of the student, where you're not only providing support for them academically, you're innovating around instructional models with team teaching, you're having a fully inclusive model of classroom instruction with everyone from your multi-tiered level of supports. You have everyone from your tier 1s all the way through, including special ed and so on. How do you think the impact has been on your staff who've had providing that personalized learning, but at scale across 1,600 odd students? I'd imagine a relatively lean staff, like they would then have to flex dramatically. Like, how have you brought them along this journey with you?
I think that each site is different and each site has its own personalities. We've got a couple of sites that have really embraced the inclusive model, have really embraced getting supports and working with those clinicians and behavioralists to support the whole child. But it's still a change. Students aren't the same students that they were before COVID. We're still working through a lot of that, still trying to catch up on learning loss while trying to level the playing field for all and give them what they need, be equitable in our methods. I think that if we were to pull these supports back and take them out of the classrooms, I fully believe that we'd have a mutiny on our hands and they would be really upset because it has allowed them to focus more on instruction, lesson delivery, and student learning as a result.
Got it. Ironically, in providing that personalized learning experience for all your students, you're actually allowing your staff to do what they do best in the classroom through a little bit more of a team-based approach towards handling the different aspects of a child's needs. As you reflect on your own personal leadership journey, When you first started out as an administrator, did you see yourself where you are today and the kind of changes that you're implementing? Was this something that you always aspired towards doing and making this type of change within your district? Or was it maybe a little bit more fuzzy when you first started out?
So it was definitely fuzzy. I think the goal moving out of the special education into an assistant principal role was to help more students, guide more students along the path and make a bigger difference than I was. And I saw myself at that time being a special education director. That's really what the end goal I had in mind was to do that. We had a really good special education director that made a difference with her staff, with the students. She really did a great job. And so she was that role model of what I wanted to transition into. But as administration went on, I got to see other models. I went from being a high school assistant principal to being a principal of a K-8 school. And during that time, I really got to have a passion and a love for the little guys and that age group. And that kind of grew into, okay, now I've got 900 that I'm responsible for, but there's still others that are making decisions and leading and asking for input. But at the same time, it wasn't necessarily everything that I had learned trying to push the system forward. And so when the opportunity came for me to be a superintendent, I believe at that time I was ready. I was young, 35 at the time, but it was a small rural school district, which allowed for me to bring my own children to school with me. I was able to have my nieces and nephews at the school with me, and my friends and colleagues brought their students out to receive an education with me. And it was a phenomenal experience. And it really helped me shape what I wanted for students, because what I wanted for my children, I was giving to all. And we really went from interventions and those things for some to all means all, and doing things that all kids we knew were good for all kids and really moving the needle. And so when this opportunity in Gustine came about, I had spent 7 years in my previous district and I was ready to grow, and the district was ready to grow in a different direction. And so I took that opportunity to go and make a difference in a larger organization.
I love it. So by having your own children in the school district as well, you really had skin in the game to build that district to be one where people actually wanted to come to learn, and others came in. And we talked about that even when you were a principal. Was that kind of like already a guiding idea and guiding approach to how you ran the school?
So what's funny is as I transitioned from the high school level to the K-8 environment as a principal, my oldest was the only one in school. He was in third grade. He went to the school district and the school that had the highest test scores the year before in all of the county. And after a few weeks in, I said, no, I'm going to bring my son to this school. And the school that I was principal at was on the other side of town where it had those students. And I needed to show the teachers and the staff there that I believed in them. And the best way that I could do that was to bring my own child there to learn from them. And that really helped me accelerate trust with my staff. We all recognized that we all wanted the same things for kids. We just had different approaches and different and varying ways of getting there, but we really wanted all kids to succeed. And we were really focused and committed to each other to make that happen.
That is such a powerful statement to move your own kids into your school to show how much you believed in the change that you were going to be making. What was the reaction from your kids, your family? Were they supportive or were they a little bit nervous?
So my wife actually attended that same school that my son was attending, and my son was fifth generation out at this school, and that's all her family knew. And while my wife had belief in me as an educator and belief in me in doing what was best for kids, she also was extremely nervous because she didn't know anything different. We had long discussions with her family about it. Her dad was on that school board at one point. I think her grandfather was on the school board as well at one point. And so they were very committed to that community. And so for me to do that, it took a lot of courage. It took a lot of conversation to do, but I truly believed in my vision for all learners. And over time, it proved to be the best thing. My kids really didn't matter one way or the other. To them, they just went to school with dad. And so I had my kids, my youngest went all the way through eighth grade with me, kindergarten through eighth grade. My oldest was third grade through eighth grade. And then my wife was a high school principal. And so my sons went from me to her. And that's just what we did. And I truly believe that it was the best decision I ever made was to bring them with me for so many reasons.
Yeah, you go big or go home almost, right? You're really putting your money where your mouth is. And when it came to building credibility as a principal, I'm sure it also gave you a lot more added motivation to make sure that everyone was doing what they needed to do and to support that vision. You suddenly sound like somebody who's a leader that truly goes all in and to help the kids and to bring them through across the board. Is there any kind of guiding values that you have that you can talk about and how these have been shaped over the course of your leadership journey?
It's interesting because I talk about my journey with my staff. They know about my struggles as a learner. The only reason, to be honest with you, I went to college was to continue to play baseball. And I was lucky enough to play baseball through college and wake up one day and have a degree. And then I wanted to give back because the people around me got me to that place, the educators, the coaches. So I really wanted to get in and coach and give back and make a difference in the lives like people did for me because it took a principal. I was a young student. I started at 4 years old in kindergarten and I hit a wall in fourth grade. And it took a principal to recognize what was going on with me. I can remember being tested for special education services and then them having an educational decision that halfway through my fourth grade year, I would go back to third grade and start over because there wasn't a learning disability. I was just young and immature. And the way that principal sat me down and had a conversation with me made all the difference in the world. It wasn't seen as a bad thing. There wasn't this stigma with, oh, you got held back or any of that kind of stuff. It was, you know what, here's your journey and we got a little bump and it's going to get better. And so I've always remember that conversation. I always remember the impact that he had on my educational journey and that without him and the teachers at that time in my life, it would be different if they would have left me in fourth grade and given me special education services or whatever. I would not have thrived later in life. And I reflect a lot on that. And I'm one that I'm willing to do anything if it's going to make a difference for kids.
Yeah, that's such a powerful story. And how do you help your staff to be able to deliver that message today to the kids that may be struggling with the same level of empathy and the same level of confidence in their actual ability?
I think we do that, and I do that through conversation, through the way I lead, through providing a model for them. I'm on campuses. I'm at every school site every week, walking classrooms, talking to kids. Just yesterday, we had a career fair at the high school. I was pulling kids over, trying to figure out what they wanted to do, having conversations about what avenues looked like, non-traditional ways to get the same accomplished. And so I think my staff sees that and knows how much I care. And something that was told to me a long time ago, and I really believe it is, they don't care how much until they know how much you care. And it is so true. And I think if we give of ourselves, I really believe in servant leadership and that I'm here to serve my students, my staff, and my community.
Yeah, that's really powerful. One last question for you, Brian. When you think about possibly meeting someone in education who's thinking about taking that next step in her leadership, but is unsure whether or not to do, what kind of advice would you give to someone like that?
I think first and foremost, I would say jump, go do it, go take the opportunity, to make a difference, to be the difference that you want to see in this world, in your school system, in the lives of young people. Take that chance, take that risk. You can always go back and teach if it doesn't work out. And I've had administrators take the leap with me, and then it just wasn't for them. And they went back to teaching, and all is good and all is great. But you're never going to know the full impact that you can possibly have if you don't take that step and go. And then I like to talk to young administrators. You really have a curve, a learning curve in this job. And really the things that help you to be successful is time and seeing things and experiencing it. And the second is knowledge. And so I really stress to read everything you can get your hands on, whether that's instruction, whether that is school law, school business. Read what you can get your hands on, because that will accelerate your learning curve and close that gap, and you will be stronger for it.
I love that. So jump and be that difference that you want to see in your world, and just read and make sure that you consume as much knowledge as you can to prepare yourself for it. And if it doesn't work out, or if it's not a fit, you can always go back to the classroom. God knows we need more teachers in this country. Such great advice. And thank you so much for being so generous with your insights and your experiences today, Bryan. And to all of you listening, I hope you've been able to take away a nugget of 3 from this episode. That is all for the Engaging Leadership Show today. This is Chi, and I'm signing off. And that's all for the Engaging Leadership Show today. If these stories resonated with you at all, head over to engagingleadershipshow.com, all one word, where you can subscribe for free to receive more leadership stories and strategies every week. Also, at that link, you can access the archive of all the featured episodes we published in summary form. It's a veritable treasure trove of educational leadership wisdom distilled for your learning pleasure. Once again, the link is engagingleadershipshow.com. Sign up today to receive the next summary this very week. Until next time, keep leading with purpose and passion, and I'll see you in the next episode.